So today I am going to cover, let me get rid of the next steps after the slope of the line. So now I'm talking about the equation of the line, and the equation of the line comes in many different forms. We're going to start with standard form. So you should know that after you have completed, girls, maybe we can save the food for lunch, okay? Once you've completed your slope test, the Unit 9 test, there is only one more test left in the course. It is a midterm test that focuses on all your skills of algebra, slope, and equation of the line. That will actually happen. It's kind of a 10 and 11. So on D2L, I've put it as part 1, Unit 10, part 2, Unit 11, and you'll be authorized for the test, the midterm exam, once you've done that. For Unit 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, there are no more tests left in the course. So take your time for your midterm, study hard, and just make sure you are as prepared as possible. I will be putting these videos to help you review the concepts before your tests, and yeah, I'll keep trying to make them. So we're going to start by talking about the standard form equation of the line. So if everyone can write in your notes, ax plus by plus c is equal to 0. We're going to review a couple of elements about standard form. Primarily, that standard form does not have any fractions. So if you have an equation with fractions in it, you will have to use your algebraic skills in order to eliminate the fractions. And that is a portion that I really, really encourage you to come see your teacher and review that with your teacher as much as possible. Now, standard form will be a big part. In case you don't know already, you are writing an EQAO exam. And we will have a unit dedicated to just attending a few seminars. You'll sign for your attendance to prove that you were there, and you will earn a unit to help prepare you for the EQAO by just attending seminars. So that will be later on in the year. So just because your units don't have tests, the second half of the course will be really dedicated to preparing you for EQAO. I believe EQAO will be completely multiple choice. And what else can I tell you? It will all be on the computer. So there is a reason we're making you familiar with D2L and taking your tests on the computer, because EQAO will be completely on the computer as well. So no paper, no pencil for EQAO. Okay, so here's a standard equation of the line, and the question is asking us, is this line linear? So this would be my answer. Yes, it is a first degree polynomial. That means that our x and y are to the power of 1. That's what a first degree polynomial means. However, the equation is not in slope-intercept form, so it has to be rearranged. So slope-intercept form is the form y is equal to mx plus b, whereas standard form is ax plus by plus c is equal to 0. So if you can write that down. And before we dive too much more into standard form, I'm going to briefly review y is equal to mx plus b, which is slope-intercept form. We were dealing more with the M part, the slope formula and how to derive the slope from looking at graphs, but we do have to review the equation form as well. Okay, so let me see what I have to backtrack into. So we learned before different topics about the slope, a horizontal line, a vertical line. And we did look at equations in y is equal to mx plus b form. But let me quickly review that. So the equation of a line. When an equation is in y is equal to mx plus b form, this is called slope-intercept form. Oh, I think this needs to be collaborated. So in slope-intercept form, the term in front of the x, that is our slope. So for this particular question, it was our rise over run, a rise of +2, +2, a run of +3 to the right. But +1, the b part of y is equal to mx plus b, represents our y-intercept, the point of our y-intercept. In this case, when x is equal to 0, y is equal to 1. So you will notice the only point where this graph intersects the y-axis would be this point right over here. When x is equal to 0, y is equal to 1. That is our y-intercept, and we get that from the equation of slope-intercept form. Now, sometimes you only know the slope, you're not given the y-intercept, and we will be exploring in units 10 and 11 a number of different scenarios. What happens when you're just given a slope and a point on the line? What happens when you're given 2 points on the line, but not the slope and the y-intercept? These are all skills you're going to practice in your guide. But it's really important to know that this is called the slope-intercept form, and that is very different from standard form. And so far, we've been figuring everything out by looking at graphs. Okay, so back to this lesson over here. So if everyone can write this question down, determine the y-intercept of this relation by letting x equal 0. Don't think we've done that before. So in order to solve for b, because y-intercepts always have an x-coordinate of 0, we are substituting and letting x equal 0. So this is the equation that we've been given. I'm going to start by letting x equal 0 because I'm trying to figure out my y-intercept. So instead of 2x minus 3y minus 6, I'm substituting my x value to have 0, let x equal 0 and solve for y. So I'm substituting 0 into the equation. That gives me 2 times 0 minus 3y minus 6 is equal to 0. 2 times 0 is equal to 0. So now this is where our algebraic skills come into play. We are letting x equal 0 and we are solving for y. I don't have to write that twice. So when I do that, I have to bring the -6, highlight that in green, I'm bringing the -6 over to the other side. When that happens, I have -3y is equal to 0 plus 6. -3y is equal to +6. I have to, in order to isolate for the y, divide both sides by -3. So that gives me a final answer of y is equal to -2. Now, y is equal to -2 is not just a number, it represents a point, and that point is the y-intercept. So when x is equal to 0, y is equal to -2.
Would the following students please report to the main office?
So no matter what type of equation you have,
one guy.
okay, I'll just wait for the announcement.
Jessica Carino, or Fergus Chow and Jessica Carino.
Now on Miss David's D2L, can you confirm, can you see both unit 10 part, like lines part 1 and lines part 2? Yes? All right, that's great. So this is the first concept. No matter if you have an equation in standard form, like the equation we have here, or an equation in y-intercept form, you always let x equals 0 in order to solve for the y-intercept. Now for the next question, find the coordinates of two other points that are on the graph. Two other points that are on the graph. So this is very easy to do when you have any equation. You basically, I can state when x is equal to 3, and instead of x, I'm going to substitute a value of +3. When x is equal to 6, I can substitute a value of +6, and I can generate different y values. I'm going to give you a second to copy this out. This is all just algebra using the distributive property, collecting like terms, isolating for y by dividing both sides by -3 in this case. I isolate for y again by dividing both sides by -3, but this gives me the point y is equal to 0. This gives me a point y is equal to 2. So by just substituting different x values into any type of equation of the line, we get the point when x is equal to 3, y is equal to 0. When x is equal to 6, y is equal to 2. I can substitute the point 500. X is equal to 500. What is y going to be equal to? Because linear equations, if they don't represent a real life situation, we assume that they're going to continue forever and ever and cover all x values. And so we can substitute different x values into our equation to solve for y. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to write that down while I get a sip of water, and then we're going to move on to the next concept. So everything that is in this seminar represents questions that you're going to find in your Unit 10 and 11 guide. And if I scroll down a little further, we can even say the points on the graph. The points on the graph are x is equal to 3, y is equal to 0, x is equal to 6, y is equal to +2. Now, when x is equal to 3, y is equal to 0, that actually represents an x-intercept because that particular point falls on the x-axis. Is it okay if I move on to the next question? Does anyone need a few? I'm going to post these notes, so leave some space if you weren't able to reveal anything. Okay. Use the slope and y-intercept to write the equation in slope y-intercept form. This is very important. Use the slope and the y-intercept to write the equation in slope y-intercept form. So we're going to start off, oops, I didn't want to do that. Okay, so remember we were given an equation in standard form. I want to change it to slope-intercept form. I'm just going to write on the board so everyone understands that slope-intercept form, when I say those words, I'm always referring to y is equal to mx plus b. Where m is the slope, b is the y-intercept. Now, I don't have the equation in slope-intercept form right now, but I can rearrange the equation to get to slope-intercept form. So I'm going to start off by isolating my y. So I want to move y to the other side because I don't want a negative y, I want a positive y. I'm moving y to the right-hand side. It doesn't matter whether y is on the left-hand side or it can also be on the right-hand side. My equation could also be mx plus b is equal to y. Those are both the same equation, right? The important element is that y should be positive. So that gives me 3y is equal to 2x minus 6. I can even rewrite it as flip the sides to make myself more comfortable. There is a 3 attached to the y. How can I get rid of that 3 that's attached to the y? So y is by itself, correct? Yes, I want to divide both sides, all sides, every single term. Please don't confuse yourself by dividing 2x minus 6 by 3 in 1 over 1, 3. You want to think to yourself, 3y has to be divided by 3, 2x has to be divided by 3, negative 6 has to be divided by 3. And that gives me my final equation. Y is equal to 2/3 x minus 2. Okay. From looking at that equation, I can tell that the slope is the term in front of the x, and the number on the side is my y-intercept, which is represented by the point when x is equal to 0, y is equal to negative 2. Whenever you are writing an equation that is in y is equal to mx plus b form, slope-intercept form, I always want you to make a note to yourself, what is the slope and what is the y-intercept, just like I'm doing there, okay? So you can be very clear and not get confused about anything. Now, I want everyone to write this little note into your study notes. You cannot look at an equation in standard form and determine the slope and the y-intercept. You cannot. You must rearrange all equations in standard form and turn them into y is equal to mx plus b form in order to determine m, and this statement should be in your study notes, all of your study notes for the unit 10 and 11 test. Because if you forget about this, that's going to lead you on a very difficult path when you're trying to solve your equation. Okay, so I want to see everyone writing this note down. Even though you might think you know it, please write it down. It's probably the most important element I can teach you in this unit. So I'll give you a second. Okay, did everyone finish copying that down? So we always have to, when I say rearrange, it was just like I did in the question above. I'm rearranging, I'm isolating my y in standard form to turn it into slope-intercept form. Okay, but in order to understand standard form, there's another important note that has to go into your study notes, okay? Standard form is always the form ax plus by plus c, where a, b, and c represent numbers in the equations or coefficients. A is a coefficient to x, b is a coefficient to y, c is a constant number. But there's a couple of rules in standard form that you have to be aware of. First of all, ax must be positive. Therefore, you have to move everything. If you're going from slope-intercept form, y is equal to mx plus b form, and you're transforming it to standard form, you have to move everything over to the side where a is positive, where the x term is positive. So for some reason, if the x term is negative, you have to move it every term over to the other side. There can be absolutely no fractions or decimals in standard form. Do not leave your equation to have any fractions or decimals. It's okay when it's in slope-intercept form because we're talking about rise over run. But if you have a fraction as your slope, you do have to get rid of the fraction for standard form. And one side of the equation always has to be equal to 0. So you basically only have a left-hand side or only have a right-hand side. One side of the equation has to be equal to 0. Who knew all these elements before they came to the seminar today? Raise your hand. Okay, so everyone learned something. This is standard form. It is also the #1 topic where grade 9s make mistakes on their midterm exam, standard form. I often get grade 9s forget about rule #2 and they leave their answers with fractions or decimals, and that is the #1 mistake that's made on the midterm. So star, star, star. Make this very important in your notes so you do not forget about this mistake. Highlight it just like I've been, circle, use different colors, whatever you can do to memorize. So I can't fit everything in one seminar for unit 10 and 11. Please make a note on day 5, period 4. I will, that's next week, I will do an extension seminar and I'll keep going with this. I'm not done, but I am going to keep going with this topic. to help you be as prepared as possible for the test. I'm also recording this seminar so that you can watch it on your own before you might take the midterm after March break, and that's a long time from now. You might forget the things I'm telling you in the seminar. So you can watch it while you're on the bus or riding in the car just to refresh your memory. Okay, so let's do some examples. Write each equation and slope y-intercept form and state the slope and the y-intercept. So for this question, these questions, we're moving from standard form to y is equal to mx plus b form. So can everyone write this down? And we're going to solve each of these questions one by one. This is what we're going to focus on today, going from standard form to y is equal to mx plus b form. Then we're going to talk about going into slope-intercept form, back to standard form. Okay, let's focus on the first equation. I always want, remember, this is in standard form because x is positive. X is positive, there are no fractions in decimals, and one side of the equation is equal to 0. That's all my elements for standard form. But I don't want standard form. I want to figure out the slope and the y-intercept. I can't just look at this equation and say, oh, there's a 3 in front of my x, so slope is equal to 3. That is never correct. Standard form never gives you the slope, nor does it give you the y-intercept. So first thing I have to do is isolate my y. So I'm going to let 5y be equal to, then I have to move the positive 3x over to the other side. When I do that, it becomes negative 3x. The negative 15 has to move over to the other side. When I do that, it becomes positive 15. Step number 1. Now, is this in slope-intercept form? Am I ready to state my slope and my y-intercept? No, I'm not ready. What do I have to do? Yes.
Divide everything by 5.
Very good. We're going to divide everything by 5. Every single term by 5. So let's do that. 5y divided by 5 is going to give me y by itself. Negative 3x divided by 5, I can't isolate that. That's going to be negative 3 over 5x. 15 divided by 5 is going to be positive 3. So now I have some good information from this problem. When I divide everything by 5, I can state that the slope is equal to negative 3 over 5. And my y-intercept is equal to 0, 3, the point, 0, 3. So my rise, I have to go down by 3, across by 5 in order to plot this. My slope, rise over run. Okay, we're going to try this again. If I had to do the opposite and I had to move from slope-intercept form to standard form, the first thing I would do is move everything to the left-hand side because x would have to be positive. So we move everything to the side where x is positive. Then I would multiply every term by 5, not divide, but I would do the opposite operation, multiply everything by 5 to get rid of the denominator, but we'll do that in due time. Let's move to this question. 7y minus 3y plus 21. So this time my y is a negative number. I'm going to work with the negative number. So I'm going to keep negative 3y. I'm going to move everything else over to the other side. So positive 7x, when I move it to the other side, it becomes negative 7x. positive 21. When I move it to the other side, it becomes negative 21. And then to get rid of this negative 3 that is connected to my y, I want to divide every single term by negative 3. That's because the negative 3 and the negative 3 will eliminate and make y positive 3. Negative 7x divided by negative 3. We're revisiting our unit 1 when you were dealing with fractions, and I always told you a double sign. Negative divided by a negative would give you a positive 7 over 3x. Negative 21 divided by negative 3 is positive 7. So I always tell my grade 9s every year, there's some really fun websites out there, Math Playground, IXL, where you can play video games to practice your integer rules. Because once we get to these harder units, this midterm exam, if your integer rules are not in place, if you're not confident with your grade 7 and grade 8 integer rules, won't do well on the final exam. It's impossible, right? So your integer rules are even more important than your fraction rules. Your integer rules are so important, okay? Adding and subtracting with positive and negative numbers, dividing, multiplying and dividing. And then I can now state my slope and my y-intercept. Okay, let's move on to the next question. I'm going to skip this one. So I have some examples of equations that are not in standard form, but you're just isolating and turning it into y is equal to mx plus b form. So I want you to try these two equations on your own and see if you can get the right answer. Basically what we were just doing, except not all the terms are on one side. So those two questions are good practice for you. We'll come back to that. Okay, let's do examples of trying to get to standard form. Yeah. So if everyone can write the following equation in your notes. 9x minus 7y is equal to negative 7. So what side is x positive for this particular equation? The left-hand side or the right-hand side? Can someone tell me? What side is x positive? Yes? Yeah. The left-hand side. Great. So that means we have to move all of the terms. Because standard form is ax plus by plus c is equal to 0, I want to move all the terms to the left-hand side. So our original equation, the negative 7, turns into positive 7 when it moves over to the left-hand side. Do I need to do anything else with this equation? Sure. Do I have to get rid of any fractions or decimals? No, right? Does that mean that my slope is positive 9? Because it's in front of the x? No. You cannot determine the slope from standard form. I would have to isolate the y and rearrange everything into slope-intercept form in order to figure out the slope. Okay, move on to this question. X minus 3y is equal to 6. How can I get this equation into standard form? What do I have to do? Someone tell me. How do I turn this into standard form? What side is x positive? Yep. The left-hand side. Okay, so I'm going to do both. I'm going to do standard form and I'm going to do slope-intercept form. So for standard form, we just have to move everything over to the left-hand side. So x minus 3y minus 6 is equal to 0. That gives me standard form. In order to find the slope and the y-intercept, I have to do something completely separate. Okay, so in this case, I am isolating my negative 3y on the left-hand side. I want to move my positive x over to my right-hand side. And the positive 6 is already on the right-hand side. It's going to stay over there. Okay, so far I see that my slope is a negative 1. Is that my slope? Is that my final slope? What am I forgetting to do? Can someone tell me? What do I have to do next? Yep. Very good. I have to divide every single term by negative 3 in order to figure out my slope and my y-intercept. So the equation becomes y is equal to negative 1 divided by negative 3 is going to be positive 1/3 x. Positive 6 divided by negative 3 is a negative 2. So now I can state, oh, do you want to do that? Yeah. Now I can state that my slope, my m, is equal to 1/3. And my y-intercept, my b, is equal to the point when x is equal to 0, y is equal to negative 2. So I could not get that information from the standard form of the line. I had to rearrange everything in order to figure out what my slope and my y-intercept is. So that really has to be hammered into you, that there are two different strategies to get the equation of the line, but only one way to find the slope and the y-intercept if we are looking at equations and we're not looking at the graphs themselves. Okay, so I think we're going to, let's see, how much time do we have? So I have a lot of examples here. Next time, I think I'm going to start with the examples. Let me turn off the Zoom. And we're going to do some hallway math next time. Let's see. Okay. We're going to do some hallway math next time where we're going to practice moving from standard form to y-intercept form. And then I'm going to teach you some more concepts related to this unit. Or we might do a full lesson on day 5. And then when we come back from March break, so you have practice before your exam, we might do some hallway math. Okay? Wonderful. So I'm going to stop recording